Mary, thank you for the comment on the suit. Hi, everyone. I'm Bruce Wren. I want to make sure everybody can hear me. Can someone just put in the chat if you can hear me right now? Ultimately, we empower individuals to lead at ACE Independent Consulting Services with our commitment to lead with integrity, purpose, and transformational leadership, enhancing influence, building trust, and driving meaningful, principled organizational change. Hello, I'm Bruce Wren. I am the founder and principal coach for ACE Independent Consulting Services. I focus primarily on leadership development. And it's my great pleasure to join such a talented group of leaders here today. Just to tell a brief story at the beginning to kind of set the table for where things are at. We live in divided times. I work in the United States. I'm based in Southern California. That's San Diego Marina behind me for those of you who've been to the States. And beautiful place to go if you ever have a chance to visit. I encourage you to visit San Diego. Ultimately, we live in divided times, particularly politically, but also in other ways as well. And I think that our culture across the world, but certainly true in America specifically, is hungry for leadership right now. I don't think there's been a more important time to talk about it. I think we need to talk about best practices and how good leadership can help set the stage for a better future for everyone. And that's really where my focus is. I have a book called The Bruce Blueprint, which is just coming out as we speak. And it talks about my perspective on leadership that I've been cultivating for my whole life, really putting it together. But most notably, during the last 20 years, I've worked as a senior executive of the Fortune 500 company, overseeing learning and development. And that's where my background is. I also worked in education years before that and have been fortunate enough to coach national champions in speech and debate and some of the better programs in the country. So I think a lot about leadership, and I've got some mentors that I look to there. Coach K, the basketball coach at Duke, is one who comes to mind. Well, I'm a North Carolina fan. If you follow college basketball, Coach K is a great leadership model. John Wooden, prior to him at UCLA, is one of my leadership models, and also the great John Maxwell, the prolific American author on leadership, who I've met personally. I've been to events as friends of John's, and they've gotten me really thinking about it. I'm certified through John Maxwell Academy. But obviously that got me thinking about leadership. So when I decided to launch my own coaching business, leadership became my primary focus because it's the area that I think we need the most right now. My areas I focus on are on educating people, being a coach as well for one-on-one as well as group facilitation, keynotes. As I mentioned earlier, I'm proud to consider myself a thought leader and an author on great leadership practices. So that's a little about me, but now let's focus on what we collectively need to do to become better leaders, because leadership is not a me thing, it's a we thing. So with that in mind, please proceed to the next slide. Principal leadership and transformational leaders is really going to be a discussion of 4 different things. To start out, vision and ethics is critically important to set the foundation. Brand, you need to develop your brand and what are you really all about at the end of the day. Resilience, there's always going to be setbacks. How do you come back from those in order to be successful, which requires failing forward. Understanding, which is the people principle, and which is a key component of emotional intelligence, which all of us really need to focus on to leverage relationships to become better leaders. Next slide, please. Communication, I think it's the key, the secret sauce to be successful, which involves the professionalism principle, but also listening, flipping the script in communication. Communication is a two-way street, and sometimes we forget that. Execution, a key component as well. Do you have the ability to plan strategically ahead of time? And do you have the ability to act at the right time? Which also requires the patience principle. Sometimes you need to wait to act until you have all the information and you're sufficiently prepared to execute properly. Engagement, which makes the teamwork makes the dream work. That's really about capturing people's hearts and minds, which I think is critically important for any really successful leader. And if you look at the world today, those who haven't captured hearts and minds are the ones who struggle the most. It's our focus on that enables us to get the team collectively to work towards shared objectives and goals. And then finally, empowerment. That's where the power of multiplication in terms of leadership and leadership success, that's where you give the ability for others to become leaders, which is a key component to being really, really successful. Thank you, Lydia. I appreciate that. So with that in mind, let's proceed ahead if you don't mind. Next slide, please. So the Bruce Blueprint, this will briefly outline and make it much easier conceptually to understand. I don't want to put you in PowerPoint hell. I do have some slides to help guide the conversation, but obviously my focus is going to be on the Bruce Blueprint, which involves these key components. The foundation to become a principled leader is your branding, your resilience, your understanding, and your communication. Think of that as the legs to a chair. If you have those four elements, branding, resilience, understanding, and communication, you have the legs to a chair and a principled focus or foundation to be successful. Then, to become a really successful leader, you want to be a transformational leader. And that's what my focus is on. And that's E to the third power, which requires execution, engagement, and empowerment. Can you act properly and achieve successful results? Can you engage others and capture their hearts and minds? And most notably, can you empower others to be successful? That's when you multiply the amount of leadership that you have within any organization or any entity you're engaged in. And that's when leadership multiplies and enables you to become a transformational leader, there's very few of those in the world. But if you can achieve that objective, you have the ability to do anything. And you can take those skills wherever you want to go. Stay where you're at now, or you can go somewhere else and be perpetually successful because of your ability to lead and give people the tools they need to succeed. Building your leadership superpowers is what the Bruce Blueprint is all about. Next slide, please. John Wooden, I mentioned him earlier, a famous college basketball coach. If you don't know him in the States, he was a coach at the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA, for a number of years. He won 10 national championships, 7 consecutive. And when I went to John Maxwell and talked with him originally and his people who researched leadership for generations, they said they considered the most successful leader they've ever researched to be John Wooden. And John Wooden was able to communicate phrases in an easily understandable fashion, which is one of the key components to his success. And this particular quote is about reaching your full potential. Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing you made the effort to become the best of which you are capable, reaching your full potential. When John was at UCLA, he had many very successful basketball players. If you're not a basketball fan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar played for him. At the time, his name was Lou Alcindor. He became arguably the greatest basketball player ever, but he was the scoring leader in the National Basketball Association in the States for a number of years. Another gentleman who I've met multiple times, Bill Walton, went to UCLA, considered arguably the most successful college player of all time, and a number of other people. Well, so anyway, John would start every first practice of every season with these players who were enormously successful. Most of them who would go to UCLA at that time and get recruited were arguably the best basketball players in the history of the schools they came from. And he would begin the first practice of every season showing players how to put on their socks and shoes. And he would tell them, if we don't put on our socks and shoes properly, we won't play to our full potential and we won't be successful. That's a great illustration of a leader who understands you start with the basics and you keep it simple and you build from there. And I think we can all take a lesson from that, as well as John Wooden in general, a great leadership individual and someone you could look to if you want to research leadership. Just one person to look at, John's a good place to start. A number of books about him are out there. I recommend Essential Wooden, which I think was published in 2009, shortly before I believe he passed away. Next slide, please. Thank you. So section 1 is on principled leadership, the Bruce Blueprint. And that's on the legs of the chair that I talked about a moment ago. That's what I'm talking about, building a principled leadership approach. Next slide, please. First, we're going to talk about vision and ethics, the foundation of principled leadership. Next slide, please. Vision is vital in principled leadership because it creates a clear vision, aligns actions, and inspires others to follow with purpose and trust. The way that you create the vision is the way that you communicate. But to be a successful leader, you always have to give a good vision if you want to reach your full potential and maximize your performance. Flipping the script for a moment, ethics and integrity are critical to principled leadership because they build trust and guide responsible decisions. And talking for a moment about that more extensively, when your ethical conduct comes into question, it can undermine everything else you're trying to do. We see this time and time again in historical examples, and certainly in political examples in recent memory across the world, but most notably in the United States right now. When ethics and integrity come into question, it's difficult to make progress in anything that you do. Next slide, please. Branding. So we have the first step was vision and ethics. Step two is branding. And this is really about what are you all about? And what do you create? Why do you try and create your brand? Leadership styles, or I like to call the positive principle, is critically important in branding. Next slide. So leadership brand, important topics come to mind. Branding itself, which is it's vital to leadership because it defines how others perceive your values, credibility, and impact. Also, going part and parcel with that is authenticity. Authenticity in leadership brings trust, strengthens relationships, and inspires others to follow with loyalty. Are you an authentic person? Can you be trusted? Is critically important for people to really be able to perform to their full potential for you. Do you care about their wants and needs, which is a critical part of any leader? It's not about you, it's about us collectively. Again, leadership successfully is not a me thing, it's a we thing. Critically important. And finally, the positive principle, which I believe is an important component. The positive principle is essential in leadership because it fosters confidence and motivates others. So if you can stay positive, particularly during rough times, which is where resilience comes into play, which we'll talk about momentarily, that positive principle can get you through it when the seas are rough and there's a lot of turbulence going on. Please advance the slides. So, styles of leadership, I just list 8 here. There's a multitude. If you Google it or go on Chat GPT or whatever, you'll find there's a lot of different styles of leadership. I think there's 8 primary styles which come to mind. These are the first 4. Servant leadership, a style in which the leader focuses primarily on serving others. Second, transactional. This is very prominent today, particularly if you look at athletic teams or you look at politics. Transactionals become much more, even large organizations with bonus programs, transactionals become much more prevalent. Focused on structure where leaders motivate through clear consequences, expectations, and tasks. Commanding, a directive style where leaders make decisions and expect immediate compliance to maintain order. And then participative, which involves team members in decision making to foster collaboration and shared ownership. These are 4 of the most popular styles of leadership you'll find if you research it. There's 4 others I'd like to discuss momentarily. Please move the slide forward. Authentic, leading with self-awareness, transparency, and integrity to build trust and inspire others. Again, as I mentioned on a prior slide, if you're authentic, people are more likely to trust you, and consequently, they're likely to perform better because of the leadership that you provide. Laissez-faire. This is a style which works for some, but it typically depends upon the particular position you oversee. A hands-off approach where leaders provide minimal direction and allow team members to make decisions. Cultures where laissez-faire has been successful, some would argue Netflix, particularly in its early stages, allowed the artists to do what they wanted to do and has used that as kind of their secret sauce. Lego has also tried to solicit feedback from their people internally to drive their success as an organization, as they've had a great amount of success over the last few decades. The next style is pace setting high performance standards and expecting the team to follow the leader's example quickly. And this typically involves benchmarking and focusing on constant progress. It's particularly popular with Fortune 500 companies and companies which are in the stock exchange and have to report to their investors. And then finally, bureaucratic, a strict set of rules and clear hierarchy to ensure consistency and control within an organization. And this is typically governmentally oriented, is where it's primarily focused, but bureaucratic is another style. So those are 8 styles of leadership, which people might pivot to. There's others, but these are, if you asked in general, what are the top 8? The research would tell you these typically would be referenced. Next slide, please. So, situational, a leader, this is not a style of leadership, but it is a way to approach leadership. A leadership style that adapts based on the team's needs and the challenge or task. So that means your style is going to change depending upon where you're at and what are the challenges you're facing. Transformational, inspires and empowers others to exceed expectations by fostering vision, growth, and change. Very importantly, when you talk about transformational, I don't list it as a style of leadership. I list it as a result of good leadership. You can't just say, I want to be a transformational leader, because you have to start with the basics first and build momentum toward becoming transformational. And that's why I don't list it separately, but rather you can use the previous styles referenced to become good as a situational leader or a transformational leader. And then finally, but importantly, leadership and brand. Leadership styles shape personal branding by influencing how leaders are seen and defined. So you have to keep in mind, you are your brand. So whatever you say and whatever you do will be focused on by your team and impact the perception of your capability as a leader. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk a little about resilience, which is coming back from challenging times and providing leadership to your people to make it through difficult or challenging periods. And then this is certainly a very important characteristic for any leader, because no leader is perfect. And sometimes there's going to be setbacks. It's about how do you learn from those, and do you fail forward, as I like to talk about a lot. Your perspective principle. How do you set the table for your vision and allow people to be more successful? And most notably, there's a question in the chat column, so I will reference that quickly. What inspired me to create the Bruce Blueprint for Leadership? I've been thinking about leadership most of my life, and I've taught at Regal Entertainment University, for example. We used to bring in managers from across the world, and I would work with them for a week to be successful. We always started on leadership with every single week people would come through. I've literally hosted hundreds, maybe even 1,000 of those classes, so a lot of them, and met thousands and thousands of managers from across the globe. And it got me thinking about leadership. And when I started my own company a little over 2 years ago, IDIAS Independent Consulting Services, leadership was the area I felt most comfortable talking about and being a success. So we're going to talk about resilience. Next slide, please. Perspective. The perspective principle in leadership emphasizes the importance of seeing situations objectively to make wise decisions and inspire others with a balanced vision. And also failing forward. Failing forward in leadership means using setbacks as a learning opportunity to grow, adapt, and improve future performance. All of us are going to have setbacks. You look at Post-it notes, were a creation by a company, that 3M, which had a glue that wasn't very adhesive. They put it on the back of scratch paper. It became Post-it notes, and now we use those all the time out there on a daily basis. So originally considered a failure, became a success. Michael Jordan, the American basketball player, didn't make his high school basketball team varsity as a sophomore, but he went on to become arguably the greatest basketball player in American history. And when he did that, he would check into every hotel with the last name of the player who beat him out when he was in high school to make the varsity, as a reminder to him of a time in which he failed, but he failed forward to become more successful. Next slide, please. Understanding the people principle and emotional intelligence, leveraging relationships to be more successful. Next slide, please. The people principle highlights the developing and empowering others is essential to build trust, fostering collaboration, and achieving lasting success. Can you lead people and make them feel comfortable performing for you? And emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence helps leaders connect, communicate, and make better decisions by managing emotions and understanding others. It's the ability to capture their hearts and minds. Start with understanding them. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's critically important. And it's a key concept behind the importance of emotional intelligence. Next slide, please. So now we're going to focus on communication. There's a question in the chat which directly affiliates with this point. The question is, in your opinion, what's the most important quality of a transformational leader should have? The most important one that you have to have, if you don't have some of the others, is the ability to communicate. Because that's how people take direction and they act accordingly. You have to have the ability to communicate successfully, and that requires a clear vision, constant communication, but not micromanagement. And that's a difficult line to find, but you have to have the ability to communicate with your team. So with that in mind, let's go to the next slide. The communication principle in leadership emphasizes the importance of clear, transparent, and empathetic communication to build trust, alignment, and effective teamwork. It communicates vision clearly, as I just talked about a moment ago. Also having the ability to listen in communication. That's critically important. Communication is a two-way street. Every leader needs to know that. You don't want to be talking all the time. You want to try and make sure you value the opinions of others. And the professionalism principle. When things get rough, can you stay in character and still be able to communicate successfully? So here's a good question in the chat which affiliates with this. How can leaders maintain strong ethics and integrity in challenging situations? Well, that's, first of all, you have to have patience, the patience principle, which I'll talk about again in a few moments. But in addition to that, you have to keep your cool. That's where the professionalism principle comes into place, because there's no question there's a ton of challenging situations out there. Let me tell you something. The higher up you go in terms of authority, and even the more money that you make in terms of compensation, there's going to be just more pressure on you to continue to be perpetually that successful, if not even better. And so there's a lot of expectations on that. And that's stressful. And to be continually successful is a challenge. And that's where resilience comes into play, as we already talked about. Can you come back from difficult situations? So with that in mind, next slide, please. We're going to talk about transformational leadership momentarily. There's a great question from Harper in the chat. Which is one simple way leaders can improve communication with their teams? I would say two. Listening and realizing it's reciprocal, but also just routinely communicating. Sometimes conversations aren't going to go like you want them to. Anyone who's got a significant other in relationships knows about that. I certainly do. So does the next conversation go? The most important conversation you're going to have every day is the next one. You can't change what's already happened, and you can't have future conversations right now. The focus is on the conversation you're having in the present. That's what it builds the ability for you to become successful in the future, is what I would say. So definitely focusing on it being reciprocal and listening, as well as continually communicating. And when something doesn't go well, learn from that experience and make the next communication even better. So we're going to talk about transformational leadership. This is the second stage, or E to the third power. Next slide, please. Execution, strategic planning, and the patience principle. Next. The execution principle in leadership focuses on turning strategies into action by setting clear goals, maintaining accountability, and ensuring consistent flow through to achieve the desired results. This is going to depend upon prioritization. I would recommend, and I'm sure many of you out there know this, a to-do list that's updated daily. At the end of the day, maybe you start your list for tomorrow and start on that list the next morning. That's critically important to make sure nothing falls through the cracks and you're continually making progress. Is prioritization. Strategic planning. Give forethought to every decision that you make, and the bigger the decision is, the more important that forethought becomes. And typically that relies upon feedback from your team. And then finally, the patience principle. Sometimes you can act too soon and make foolish decisions. So you want to make sure you act at the right time, so that way it can enable you to be successful. That's what the execution principle is all about. And when you show you can be successful in execution, that captures the confidence of others and enables you to create trust. So the question that was asked in the chat just now, how can leaders build trust within their teams? Show you can execute properly. That's going to enable you to be much more successful. Next slide, please. Engagement. Teamwork makes the dream work. And again, this is about capturing their hearts and minds. Next slide, please. The engagement principle. The engagement principle in leadership is actively involved in motivating team members to foster commitment, enthusiasm, and a shared sense of purpose. That's the secret sauce of leadership, is the ability to capture hearts and minds. And in engagement, and the people principle is all part of that. You care about your people, their wants and needs. Do you provide for them? For example, Mary's got a great question in the chat right now. How can leaders balance achieving results while still supporting and motivating their team members? Well, achieving results and being supportive are really two different things, but they're both critically important. So, for example, typically in terms of results or achieving results, benchmarking is a good way to achieve that, constantly trying to draw progress forward. Sometimes you're going to have a bad quarter if you're a public company and have to report that. It's what you do the next quarter, which will determine your future success, but you're still going to have to achieve the results with that team. Now, there will be some changes, people coming and some people going periodically, but you have to have the ability to motivate that same team. That's where the positive principle comes in. So when I talk about, continuing to motivate your team members, you want to be supportive. In good times, that's easier, but in bad times, it's arguably even more important. That's part of the reason resilience works in. If you look at any great leader out there, I guarantee you, if you pulled them aside, they're going to give you an illustration of a time in which they failed to lead to their full potential. I've certainly been through that. And look what you learn, the lessons you learn from going through that rite of passage that enables you to ultimately be successful. The only way you truly lose is if you just quit trying, and you certainly don't want to do that. And you need to remember, when the results aren't quite where you want them, you still need to depend upon that team to reach future results. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about empowerment. This is the power of multiplication and leadership success. Again, leadership multiplies. Next slide. So the empowerment principle. The empowerment principle in leadership direct development involves giving individuals the authority, the resources, and confidence to take initiative, make decisions, and drive success. That's where multiplication of leadership happens, and it's the final step of the transformational leadership that you're trying to achieve. So again, to review briefly, principle, like the four legs to a chair, brand, resilience, understanding, and communication, that's your foundation of principled leadership. Then when you kick in E to the third power, execution, engagement, and empowerment, that enables you to reach the next level of success and truly become a transformational leader. That's my goal. I think it should be, I would recommend it be your goal. If you really want to have a massive influence and leave a legacy you can be proud of, become a transformational leader. We've seen some happen in the American culture, and not all of them are necessarily universally right about everything. Steve Jobs was a transformational leader, I would argue, at Apple, but he certainly had some management styles which were a little aggressive and certainly arguably over the line at times. So, but he was able to transform the way Apple did business. They even brought him back after he originally departed the business. And there's several other examples, but ultimately having the ability to be a transformational leader involves a lot of components. Some of them you'll be better at than others, but it's all of them put together collectively that ultimately dictates your ability to lead successfully and ultimately the performance of your team. Next slide, please. So section 3 is the importance of transformational leadership. And here's where I make the case for transformational leadership and why I think it's very important. Next slide. So transformational leadership, it creates vision. Transformational leaders create a compelling vision, a persuasive one that people are in favor of, and it motivates people to pursue a shared purpose. Trust, as we talked about a few moments ago. These leaders model integrity and authenticity, earning the trust of their team and commitment of their teams as well. So that's a key component, a common characteristic you need to have is to make sure you have the ability to create trust. And that often is found through authenticity and the maintenance of integrity. Innovation. Transformational leaders encourage creativity and challenge the status quo to drive growth and reach improvement. So that's very important. This is where communication being a two-way street and the listening component we talked about earlier as a key part of the communication process is, do you have the ability to take feedback and make it positive? Sometimes it's going to be uncomfortable. If you go look at some of the research out there, crucial conversations, fierce conversations of sorts that some of us may fear. When you reach the other end of those conversations, you can be in a better place. So innovation, it only happens in an environment where people feel valued and they're able to participate in the betterment of the organization. And then finally, empowerment. They develop and uplift individuals that help them grow into confident, capable leaders themselves. Can you empower others to succeed? They're watching you as a role model, whether you want them to or not. Kids are the same way for any parents out there. All of this applies equally to our personal lives as well as our professional lives. But what type of a sample are you setting out there to lead by example for your team or arguably the people around you? Next slide. So transformational leadership is what I'm focusing on and what it's all about. In my book, I talk extensively about the importance of transformational leadership and give a number of examples of people out there that can be considered transformational leaders. Nelson Mandela comes to mind. Oprah Winfrey in the States comes to mind. There's a litany of other leaders that are out there I try and offer as examples for people. And it does have an international flair, so it does include folks from throughout the world, just as this great event, the Virtual Summit, which I love being in, has included so many talented people that we can learn from each other. And all of that feedback, it comes into play as we think through what's important to us. And at the end of the day, that's what the Bruce Blueprint is all about. It's my culmination of leadership, having done studies of leadership for most of my life and had a chance to work in education as well as in corporate America to try and work with others to become better at what we do. The key component, the common denominator, is successful leadership enables us to maximize performance wherever we go. And most notably, that gives us the ability to become transformational leaders. That's what it's all about. So I'm open to any questions. If I have time left, I think we're half an hour in, but just thought I would offer that and just open it up to the floor. If anybody has a question that I can answer, and hopefully this time has benefited you. I do want to reiterate, it's my sincere pleasure to be involved with IDIAS and the Global Virtual Summit. They do a great job. I've worked with them before at other events live, and they're just are incredible to work with and so motivating for me. And in addition to that, I want to thank all of the leaders who had a chance to dial in throughout the events this week. That it's really nice to learn from each other, and all of that allows me to be a little bit better at what I do, and allows all of us to be better at what we do, so we can become better in life. So with that in mind, this is my book. The cover of the book, it's coming out as we speak. The Bruce Blueprint is coming out soon. Be looking for it. It'll be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the usual areas. I've done articles before. This is my first full book. It's my perspective on leadership, focusing on brand, resilience, understanding, communication, and E to the third power. And so if there's how to contact me, you can click the QR code. That'll bring you to get in contact with me. You can also find me on my website, which is brucewren.com. Again, I work with one-on-one trainings. I also do corporate facilitations. I do keynote speaking. And I'd love to work with you if you want to become a better leader, or if there's areas outside of that. I just love to create some networking and have a chance to work with all of you. If you're on WhatsApp, that's my number, 865-803-3680. Feel free to contact me. And then on LinkedIn, I'm available too. I'd love to follow you and have you follow me on LinkedIn so we can stay in touch going forward. I love LinkedIn. It's my favorite social media outlet, as it enables me to stay in touch with people I've met throughout my leadership journey. So with that in mind, again, I'm open to questions if we have some time remaining. If anybody has a question, you can put it in the chat. I'll be happy to answer. But it's been my sincere pleasure to be here and to have a chance to share my thoughts with you. And it's something that days like this are the ones I enjoy the most. So thank you for that.